All right, it's all you, buddy.
Welcome. My name is Jerry Knapp. Tom McCoy is on and with us here, and the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to go through a couple slides with you to talk about response to explosive gases. You don't know what you don't know. I didn't know what I didn't know, and it almost killed me. And that's what that first slide is: the house that blew up and like I said, nearly killed me. So we'll go through that. I am the chief of the Rockland County, New York Hazardous Materials Team. We're about 30 miles north of New York City, in the gorgeous Hudson Valley. I've been working with Tom McCoy from Sensa Technologies for a few years now. I'll introduce you to a wonderful instrument that they have. And I think that's about all we need to say. Tom, you want to say hello? Unmute your mic. Tom, we need you to unmute your mic. In your little photo, there's in the lower left, there's a red microphone with a slash through it. Just click that once.
Hey, Jerry, I had to go up to the top right corner. There's an invisible little box there that'll show up when his arrow gets there. And that can unmute as well.
Okay, Rich, thanks. Tom, I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah, the toolbar will be either on the top or the bottom of the screen, but it'll be hidden until you scroll your mouse to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Tom, I don't know if you heard that. It's if you scroll your mouse, there'll be a toolbar at the top or the bottom. There you are.
Mouse over your name.
There. Is it done?
You're good.
Can you hear me? All right.
You are on the air.
I am Tom McCoy with Firecraft Safety Products. We're the master dealer for Sensit in the fire industry. In the United States, every gas utility in America uses a metal oxide sensor to find explosive gases. Sensit provides 80% of that 100%. They are a very dominant product because of a patented metal oxide sensor and software. I heard Steve mention there may be some police on board here. If that's the case, we also are the master dealer for a company that, at least in the States, there is no way to get into a police car now, or a vehicle that a policeman needs to get into because of laminated glass. I was walking my dog this morning, and my policeman was there, and I said, "How long does it take you to get into a car?" And he said the last time was about 20 minutes. This tool right here can cut into a car in a matter of a couple of minutes. It's the only thing we know of that can help the police be able to do that now that laminated glass. Sorry for that plug, but it's the only thing out there, and I want to make sure some people know about it. I'm done.
Okay, so we will roll on here. For everybody, I'll do about 20 minutes of death by PowerPoint, and we'll open up the questions and hopefully get a little good discussion going. So you don't know what you don't know about gas leaks, and we're talking mostly about natural gas and propane, basically the same things, same response procedures. Obviously, propane goes down, natural gas goes up, and the flammable range is a little different, but from a response perspective, it's pretty similar. So just want to show you how fast it happens. So this was Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. It was a subcontractor of Verizon pulling communication line. And this was a line of duty death for a firefighter. And again, the reason I put this video in is just to show you how fast you go from hero to zero. So you saw how complacent people were before the explosion and how very uncomplacent they were afterwards. So one of the thoughts I want to give to you is when you go into an explosive release of explosive gas, think about the worst scenario first, kind of like we do with hazmat or automatic alarms, and just plan for the worst until your instrumentation proves that it's really not a big deal. So in ordering your size up, I'd ask you to think about as you're rolling in and trying to determine, is this a major emergency or is this one of those minor annoying emergencies that we, gas leaks that we go to all the time. So this was where all this started. This was 2012. My fire department had responded to a contractor who struck a gas line. This guy was using a torpedo, it was an underground boring device. Hit a 2-inch, 60-pound main. We think it leaked for about an hour before our arrival. We arrived on scene at 12:13. The building blew up at 12:56. We were on scene about 43 minutes. We had evacuated probably 20 houses. My crew had done probably 7 or 8. We got to the last building and the building was locked. And the gas company put one of their meters up against the outside of the building. So they have a high gas reading coming from the inside out. They asked us to force the door. I had a 6-foot hook and my 4-gas meter, thinking I'm the safest guy there. My 4-gas did not get any readings, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But if I'd have had the right tools, if I'd had the irons, I'd force the door because I trusted the utility guy. So another thing I want to pass on to you is we, the fire department, are in charge of life safety. It's our scene. It's not the utility scene. And that being said, we need to have procedures, much like paramedic procedures, for the 6 types of gas leaks that occur. And if anybody's interested, I can send you a draft of the SOPs. So after this incident, I have a friend, Dan Moran. He may be on with us. I'm not sure if he can make it today. And Dan's our hazmat core fire coordinator. He's a research chemist and he has a very open mind. I call him Dan. I thought I knew what I was doing. So my captain and I were near the front door when the building blew up. I was launched about 30 feet toward the front of the house. The captain went a similar distance kind of to the side. He was buried under debris. I wasn't. We had some pretty serious injuries. I had a fractured cheek, a very severe concussion, burns on my head, and severe bruises to my legs to the point where they both turned black the next day, black and blue. Kenny, my captain, had 5 broken ribs, 2 broken vertebrae. He was knocked unconscious. Obviously, when he woke up in extreme pain, he was not a happy camper. And he was out of work for 13 months. I was a little more fortunate. I was out of work for 6 weeks. So any release of explosive gas is not routine, although we sometimes think it is. So this is afterwards. The house literally was shredded. The flammable range for natural gas is 5 to 15% gas and air. We think this was around 10%, right? 10% gas and air, where you get the most bang for your buck. Here's a picture, obviously after the explosion. The house that exploded is in the right, upper right, behind that van, or what's left of the house. Where the fire is coming out of the trench is where the torpedo went in, and the contractor was tunneling underneath the road. I helped put Kenny on the backboard with this as the background, and I could only think of what a messed up day it is when you're putting what we thought was our dying captain on the backboard, and the street is on fire behind him. So kind of a very traumatic day for both of us and actually the whole fire department. So some things I did not know. That's where I started, somewhere around the front door or what's left of the front door, and ended up around where the yellow arrow is. So our flight was about 30, 35 feet. I have a friend that's an FBI bomb expert, and after I got out of the burn trauma center, I called him up and said, Jim, why am I still alive? And he explained that humans are light debris for explosions. So we had taken our flight, we had landed, and major parts of the building went over top of us, and that's why we survived. So the bottom line is we were lucky. I didn't know what I didn't know. We were close enough that the overpressure sent us on our way, and we were far enough away that the parts of the exploding building didn't kill us outright. So kind of the grace of God was with us that day. So why didn't I know this stuff? I thought I was a pretty well-trained guy. In 2012, I was the assistant chief of our hazmat team. My fire training history is really extensive. I thought I knew what I was doing, but I didn't. And you may be in the same boat. And here's why you don't know. Not sure how it is in Canada, but our training in the US is weak for especially gas and propane emergencies. In my county, we get about 30 minutes of PowerPoint from the utility. Pat on the butt says you're ready to go to a gas leak. So again, I didn't know what I did not know. We have learned, Dan and I, from teaching this class all across the US, we have learned that fire department SOPs are generally weak. They should be using gas industry best practices. They don't. A lot of times the industry does not want to share those practices with us. We were able to collaborate with FDNY. A fellow by the name of John Buckheit, a deputy chief from FDNY, was tagged with responsibility of rewriting their SOPs. So we were able to share a lot of knowledge there and gain a lot from them. And I'll share some of that with you in the next few minutes. Our fire department membership understanding of air monitoring is generally pretty weak. In the hazmat world, we do a pretty good job with that. In the fire world, and again, in the US, we do a terrible job with that. A lot of times the chief buys an instrument. A lot of times it's an instrument that's really made for a confined space, a typical 4-gas I don't need to tell you guys about. And we think we have a combustible instrument, combustible gas indicator. And we kind of do, but we kind of don't. Again, training is probably weak on that. So you add all those things up, we end up making up the procedures on the scene and not knowing we don't know. So here's some of the take homes that I like you to get out of this. Life safety is the fire department mission, not find and fix. Find and fix is not our job. You don't know what you don't know. I think we've beat that up enough. We'll talk a little bit about sizing up a gas emergency, propane or natural gas. We're responsible, not the gas technician. I'm not saying blow that guy off. Hopefully he's very well trained and has good instruments, but we're in charge and we need to know what we're doing. Trust but verify what the gas tech is telling you. I would, if he said force the door, I'd have forced the door and I'd probably been dead today. Thankfully I didn't have the right tools. This one's important for your whatever type of metering devices you're using for natural gas or propane detection or other flammables. Read the damn directions. Read the damn directions. You will be surprised at the things you learn from reading the directions. There's 6 types of gas emergencies. The 7th is transmission emergencies, and we need to have procedures for each of those. Again, Steve has my email. If you want a copy of a draft, I can send it to you, and hopefully it'll be useful to you. Again, procedures. So here's what I do not know, and we found out most fire departments don't know. Career, volunteer, small, big, doesn't matter. We're all kind of weak. Nobody's fault, but that's where we are. So I did not know that the utility company procedures for a locked building was if there's any reading of gas coming from the inside out, it's immediate withdrawal. That's their action level. So the gas tech should have not have asked us to force the door. He should have backed up and remotely shut off the gas and electric and wait for the building to vent down on its own. There's no safe way to get in that building. So talk to your gas company about what their procedures are for locked buildings. If they ask you to force a door, tell them absolutely not. Probably is a good time to talk about this. We think we have to do a primary search all the time at this. You know, people will say, oh, you know, it could be somebody in that building. Natural gas, the odorant in natural gas, methyl mercaptan, makes people sick at like 2 parts per million. 2 to 4 parts per million. It's super low levels. So people tend to self-evacuate. Yeah, I got it. There could be you know, somebody confined to bed or somebody can't smell gas, you know, because of some condition, or maybe they've had the Chinese virus or whatever it might be. But so before you risk your guys' lives to force that door, try to verify that somebody is in the building. Make sure, you know, that whole risk benefit analysis. So you guys are familiar with that. I don't need to talk about that a lot. Trust but verify. We discussed that. I did not understand underground gas migration. The picture I showed you before of where the torpedo went in was afterwards. After it lit up, I had looked at that when the gas was leaking. And what did my training tell me? Tell me natural gas is lighter in air. It's coming out of the ground. What are you worried about? I did not understand it. It all wasn't coming out of the ground. Some of it was migrating underground, making its way back into nearby buildings, either through pipe systems, through cracks in the foundation, through backfill trenches, whatever it might be. So that gas backed up, took the path of least resistance, went back into this building. The boiler came on. It was January 16th, so it was cold, or relatively cold for us. And the building took off. So it was January 16th here in New York. That meant there was a frost layer in the ground. In Canada, you guys are probably working on a frost layer now from what Steve was saying. So the frost layer prevented the gas from seeping up and coming up. So it was like a cap on it. And it took the path of least resistance, which happened to be back into a nearby building. I did not understand monitoring subsurface structures, sanitary and storm drains for the presence of natural gas. Again, that's a clue. Is gas migrating underground or isn't it? But doesn't tell you the whole story, but an important part of your size up. For some reason, we started to evacuate from the outside of this area toward where the gas leak was. Apparently, you know, it sounds kind of obvious. You should start the evacuations closest to those people that are in the most danger, which are near the leak, and work your way out. We just didn't do that. After the building blew up, I had no clue that there may be another explosion. I'm embarrassed to admit it, but it just never entered my mind. We were so busy with, you know, taking care of Kenny and trying to find out whether I was going to live or die, and is there anybody else under the debris, and where are the gas tanks, and we just focused on the incident and never gave a thought to an additional explosion. So if one building blows up, hey, maybe the next one can. We need to be doing some right things to figure that out. So life safety is our job. Nationwide weakness, again, small departments, big departments, doesn't matter. I got a call from Boston Fire Department not too long ago. They were rewriting their SOP. So, you know, here's what I call the 6 types of leaks. The 7th is a transmission line, which I don't talk too much about because that's kind of a bigger Megillah. Out of these, the outside odor of gas is probably the most dangerous. If it's a service line or a main that's leaking, we don't know where that gas is going. You know, just that's kind of the one that makes us pucker a little bit. So let's talk about response procedures. You should have a procedure for each one of these. Again, not down to the gnat's butt, but 3 or 4 strategic things for the incident commander to think about, 3 or 4 tactical things for the boots on the ground to do, especially when you're doing your size up. Steve, can you talk about this incident a little bit? This was something your guys shared with me.
Oh, I think this is from London. So
It is.
I don't have the personal firsthand account of it. But it was pretty significant event. We did a WebEx on this last year, right, Rick?
Yeah, I think that was a car into the meter on the outside.
It was, yeah.
If I recall, as far as the original cause, and then the explosion of the house shortly after that. But Yeah, I don't recall the details, but I know we had London Fire explaining all the timelines. So
Yeah, Rick, you're correct. There was a drunk driver into the gas meter on the front of the house. The first two engine, I believe, was, got her out, and they got out of the kill box. And I think that's another important consideration for you guys to think about. What's the kill box? It's like the collapse zone, where, if the building takes off or something goes bad, where are you likely to get killed or injured? And New York City now calls it the blast zone. I tried to convince them to use the kill box, but they went with blast zone. We didn't think hot cold zone was good. Hot, warm, cold. We wanted something different. So I call it the kill box, kind of to get people's attention. So here's again a little review of my incident. This was the house that exploded. Just to give you an idea of, and by the way, the emergency response guidebook says that for natural gas, the kill box should be 330 feet or 100 meters in all directions. In our neck of the woods, we're very suburban. That's kind of hard to evacuate all those people. So in your SOP, you need to decide what your kill box is going to be. Certainly, you don't want to park your rigs there. You want to minimize the amount of people that get in your people, and any people actually that get in the kill box until you prove it's not a major incident, it's a minor incident, and we're not dealing with life safety here. So the red circle is 75 feet from the front door. Again, this is the house. I think you guys can see my cursor, right?
yeah, we can see it moving there.
Okay, thanks, Rick. So so this is the house that blew up. The torpedo went in the ground somewhere around here. So think about what your kill box is going to be. This is 75 feet. The yellow circle is 150 feet. So I'm sorry, I didn't put that slide in there. I use a slide in its full presentation. Around the middle of the street, the header board, which was the 3 2x10s that went over top of this picture window, made it to the middle of the street. So that thing probably weighed, I don't know, 7,500 or 100 pounds, maybe. Big debris that could kill you. The front door made it, aluminum storm door made it across the street over to here. So just think about where you want to be or don't want to be if this building should explode, and that's your kill box. So you can look at some case histories and see how far, significant debris went. So let's talk a little bit about size up. If we rolled up to this incident, if you rolled up, for odor gas in this building, what do we have to do? You got to take your 4 gas, you got to go inside, you got to, wait for it to process the sample. It takes time. So there's a new instrument out. I don't know if you've seen it or not. It's a laser-based gas detector. It has a 100-foot range. I'll show you a picture of one in a video in just a second. It's about as big as 2 cell phones stacked on top of each other. Again, it has a 100-foot range. It penetrates glass. It is a super instrument. FDNY just bought 130 of them, and we got to share their research and development procedures with them, and we highly recommend it. There's several manufacturers. I like Sensit. It's just the one I'm familiar with. We've used it. My department has 2 of them now. We've used it at a number of leaks. It is absolutely terrific. I mentioned that the laser penetrates glass, or most glass. So it'll tell you, is there gas there or isn't there? So the instrument's not so good for quantity, but it's good for quality. And what do I mean? When you're doing your size up, what do you want to know at this alarm? You want to know where there is not any gas. You want to know where there's a little gas, and you want to know where there's a lot of gas. And that's the real value of this instrument. So you can start your life safety objectives there. So you may argue, if you come to this building, you want to detect gas in different places, but generally, you got to go in a couple different. You want to air monitor a few different places to determine the life safety. So my wife goes out shopping one day, and I've got this instrument, and I've turned the gas on. This is my kitchen. I've turned the gas on in my stove. I've blown the fire out, so now it's leaking gas. So the instrument is gonna shoot a laser. The laser is gonna hit the natural gas, scatter The instrument is going to read how much laser energy comes back and do a calculation and tell us how much gas is between me and wherever the laser is bouncing off of. So the instrument needs a couple things. It needs to pass through the gas cloud. It needs to reflect off a wall, the floor, the ceiling, whatever it might be, a fence outside, the side of a house. It needs to reflect that laser energy. And then it'll give you an idea how much gas is between you and your target. So let me just run the video. So there's gas coming up from the burner. We'd expect that. We're getting a parts per million reading. So I've shut the gas off. This is natural gas. So we'd expect to find some trapped underneath the microwave there. You know, it's lighter than air. So most of the gas is dissipated, but we're still getting some low readings with the laser. The instrument has 3 lasers. The invisible laser detects the gas. The red laser is telling you how far away you are. It's your distance measurement, and the green laser just tells you where you're pointing it. Again, we have used this successfully at a number of gas leaks, and it's just been absolutely tremendous. So let's talk about locked building. You probably don't have a procedure for a locked building. This is a metal oxide sensor. This is what Tom was talking about a little bit earlier. A metal oxide sensor is going to detect gas and other things, but we'll talk about natural gas and propane at very low levels. Your 4 gas that's based on a catalytic bead sensor has a blind spot up to 1, 2, 3,000 parts per million. And has some software built into it, so it doesn't false alarm on you all the time and give you a reading, a false reading. So your 4 gas, if it has a cat bead sensor in it, is a little bit blind on lower levels. We call this an explosive gas detector. The metal oxide sensor is going to detect down to about 10 parts per million. This particular one gives you parts per million and converts over to percent LEL with a digital readout. So had I had this instrument with me, in 2012, I don't know, maybe I would have been too close to the building, but I would have known there's gas coming in that building a little bit sooner. So we recommend, and again, FDNY is just down the road from us. I did not understand why they used an instrument like this with their 4 gas. And obviously the reason is so they can get lower level detection than their 4 gas is given them. So procedures, do you have procedures for an inside leak? You should. So again, here's some basic facts about your 4 gas. It's a personal monitor. Most of them have a clip on it. And when I do this class hands-on in the classroom, I ask people to bring their 4 gas, and I go, "Why does this have a clip on it?" They're like, "Oh yeah, so you can hang it on your turnout gear." Yeah, that's right. It's a personal monitor. It's a 4 gas. It's not a combustible gas indicator. I talked before about it's blind below 1% LEL and maybe as high as 2, 3, depending on conditions. It's definitely blind. The catalytic bead sensor is definitely blind to 500 parts per million, and that's a laboratory condition. So kind of crazy. Humans, the CDC here in the US has proven that humans can smell deodorant, normal humans that aren't, incapacitated by a disease or anything. Normal humans can smell deodorant at less than 1 part per million. Now we know natural gas doesn't smell, deodorant is added, but that odorant, ethyl mercaptan or methyl mercaptan is so strong, people smell it at low levels. So what does that mean to us? That's why we get complacent. We always go to these gas leaks, nothing happens because we're getting there at a really low level, and that's a good thing. So you may go to a call and smell gas in the house or in the building, and your meter is giving you 0 reading. So now you know why. I talked about the software again. Depending on the manufacturer, maybe as high as 2 or 3,000 parts per million that the instrument is not seeing. So what do you need to know about your instrument? How long is the warm-up period? We trained the fire department, this is 2 years ago now, here in New York. Well-funded, well-trained, highly experienced fire department, and they did not know that their instrument took 5 minutes to warm up. So as we're doing the training, a captain in the back of the room, he slaps the desk and he goes, "I bet that's why we get 0 readings all the time." So please read your directions. Obviously, you need to know your alarm limits, the action level for your fire department. We all know, as hazmat guys, 10% LEL, that this meter is going to alarm for a low alarm for flammable gas or flammable combustibles. But your fire department needs an action level. So for the senior leaders in the department, you owe your firefighters and your officers below you what the action level is. Some departments in my county use odor gas for mandatory evacuation. Some use 10%, some even use 20%, but that needs to be in your SOP. T90 time as hazmat guys, we know that's how many seconds it takes to process the sample for your particular instrument to give you a 90% confidence that that's really a good reading. T90 times can vary. Correction factors, obviously, I don't need to talk about that. You all hazmat guys, you know that. Cross sensitivities. When I have a little explosion chamber, we put propane and or natural gas in, depending on where I'm teaching, and we'll get a CO reading with just propane or natural gas in the explosion chamber when the instrument is in there. And I'll ask the guys, "Hey, is there any CO in there?" "Well, yeah, the instrument's reading CO." Got to read the directions. The CO sensor is cross-sensitive to a lot of things, not only propane and natural gas, it's cross-sensitive to acetylene and hydrogen. So pretty important, and we know that. This is really important. We kind of stumble on this doing the training. What does your instrument read at 100% LEL? So obviously we don't want to be in that position, but unless you've used your instrument in real gas in a training situation, in an explosion chamber or tabletop explosion chamber, something like that, you don't know. So some of the better instruments read OFF. So I always ask guys, "What's that?" "Oh, it's off." So if you got Slappy and Pappy at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, and maybe they're not your sharpest guys, Slappy says to Pappy, "Hey, the meter's off." Well, the meter's off scale. The meter is actually off to protect the catalytic bead sensor so it doesn't burn itself up. Some other instruments read 999, some have 3 stars, some have over limits. This particular instrument I thought is cool that has the picture to the right. It has a skull and crossbones. So at least you got and it's at 13% LEL, and the lower right is LEL on that instrument. So unless you have some kind of experience with your instrument in an explosion chamber, you may not know these things. So we need to do a little better job training. I think the icon at 10% LEL should be like that. Everybody knows what that means. OL or OFF maybe doesn't tell a story. So here's a quick comparison of catalytic bead sensor that's probably in your 4-gas or your CGI, combustible gas indicator, as opposed to a metal oxide. Metal oxide has a really low sensing capability. The T90 time is like instant. The cat bead may, depending on field conditions, may not react till up near 3,000 parts per million. The metal oxide is pretty instantaneous. You can use it as a leak finder if you want. The sensor has a pretty long life, minimal maintenance. Something just to think about. Again, this is a particular instrument. It's not, this is the company fire department down the road from me. I think these are running $300 or $400. They run on typical C batteries, so you don't have to worry about charging it. It's a pretty maintenance-free instrument. A lot of manufacturers make these, so it's not. They're available. They also will detect those chemicals and flammables that we see on the right side there. So kind of a poor man's PID. It's a good instrument, but we got to teach our guys how to use it. We haven't done too good with that. This is an instrument used by the gas industry. It has a metal oxide built into the tip here. Has a metal oxide built into the tip, so you get a fast, low reading. This gooseneck gives you, I think it's about 18 inches worth of reach. So we all know natural gas goes up, propane goes down. So we can get to those areas with a gooseneck instrument like this and get a good reading. So action level, especially for an underground leak, we want to rule out rule out where the gas is or isn't. So there's two places I recommend you monitor the nearby buildings. The left-hand picture is right inside the front door. And again, we're sniffing, I shouldn't say sniffing, we're air monitoring high because that's where natural gas may be. So we want to get a reading right inside the front door, and we want to get a reading in the basement. If there is one, it's called a POE, the point of entry, because if there's an underground leak outside and it's coming back into the building, it's probably coming in through the foundation or where the pipes come in, or, those kind of things. So if you're looking for natural gas from an underground leak, monitor inside the front door and a POE, the point of entry, in the basement or where the pipes come into the building. This is something we learned I didn't know before the explosion, monitoring subsurface structures. Here we're sniffing, I say sniffing, when I mean air monitoring, we're sniffing for natural gas that may have escaped from an underground leak into a sanitary sewer, which may obviously run right back into the pipes, may allow the gas to run right back into nearby buildings. Also, just remember, gas from the sewage is methane as well. So you may get low readings of methane, pretty much everywhere. But if you're getting, 10, 20, 30% LEL, I would urge you to suspect it is a natural gas leak. So this is the explosion chamber that we use. I don't know if this video, I don't think I have this video. And in part 2 of this program, in a couple of weeks, if we do it again, I'll show you how this explosion chamber works. We fill it with natural gas. We use the instruments in there. We have an igniter and it lights up the gas, and we obviously take the instruments out before we do that. But it's great training. Guys get to see their instrument, go into alarm, get to see how quick or slow it responds. It's just some great hands-on training. We followed it up with tabletop training. We call this Leak Street, and it's intentionally simple. It's 3 houses on each side of the street. The yellow chem tape here indicates that's where the odor, this particular scenario indicates that's where the odor of gas is coming from. This is it's called a gasless trainer. This iPad here sends false readings to the instrument team, and the fire department gets to practice their procedures and the draft procedures we give them in class. So we go over the procedures on PowerPoint, we go over the procedures on the town, and then we have a full-scale leak street at our training center. I don't know if I have a photo of it. We have a full-scale leak street at our training center with 3 buildings on each side of the street that are fitted with gas scenarios, natural gas scenarios. So actually, I should have showed you this first. This is how we do our scenarios on PowerPoint. This was actually a real leak we went to a few years ago. A backhoe here struck a gas main. Actually, the gas main was in this fellow's driveway. They were replacing the driveway. So a couple lessons learned out of this is the gas mains here in the US can be anywhere. They run through yards. They may not necessarily be in the middle of the street. And again, for training, we put these scenarios up and then we talk through what we think the proper response procedures are, and then we move to the board, the model town, and do them there. So we do it on PowerPoint, we do it on the model town, then we go outside and do it live. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention to you about this is if a backhoe has found a gas pipe and it's a leak like this, the other concern is there damaged pipes inside the building? So we've got damaged pipes out here that we can see, and we've all looked in a trench and seen the gas pipe broken. If typically the backhoe operator, when he finds a pipe, he will stop the machine right away. Not necessarily shut it off, but he'll just stop the bucket, say. So he may have pulled the pipe. He may have opened some of the pipes in the nearest building. This was on a service line. So he may have damaged pipes inside. So just because the gas is coming out of here doesn't mean you don't have to check inside the building. So that's your first life hazard there. I think we talked about this. Our training is weak. Our SOPs may be weak. Our air monitoring understanding is weak. So that's why you don't know. In an hour here in PowerPoint, I can't tell you everything you need to know, but I just wanted to, make sure that you make yourself hard to kill, get the right training. Hopefully in 20 minutes or so here, we get you pointed in the right direction. So with that, I will open it up to questions, thoughts, concerns, anything you guys might have.
I had a couple in the that I put in the chat just so I didn't forget, Jerry.
Okay.
You're talking about underground leaks and outside leaks. I've heard that the soil itself can sometimes scrub the smell, like get rid of the mercaptan, and something to look for is like flies. Flies seem to be attracted to it. Is that something you can speak to at all, or?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I'm frankly, I was shocked at how many firefighters, both career and volunteer, don't know that. If the mercaptan can get scrubbed out by the soil, I don't. If the gas passes through the soil, I don't know the chemistry of that. I don't need to know that. We don't need to know the chemistry. We just need to know what happens. Farmington, Maine, 3 years ago had a propane leak that passed through the soil. All weekend, the propane leaked into the building. The employees came to work on Monday, smelled some odor of gas, not a lot, but got out of the building. Fire department showed up. He wanted to, quote, make the building safe. This is a 35-year captain who apparently had a training gap as well. He and a firefighter went into the basement. His meter was in alarm because of the amount of propane that was in there. He said he didn't smell anything. So he threw the main breaker. The building exploded, killed him, and nearly killed the firefighter who was with him. Again, not picking on this fella, but again, a highlight of trust your meter, listen to your meter. Just because you don't smell it doesn't mean gas isn't there. So, Steve, good point.
Yeah, and that's something, Jerry, that you're talking about there that we really preached, at least here in Hamilton, and it kind of led to the advent of our program. We now have a metal oxide sensor detector, actually a Sensit on one truck in each district. So we have 3, and they go to our natural gas calls and odor calls in general. Because we had, as every service has, hundreds of those calls a year where you get those minor leaks, and it's those what we called sorry, my phone's ringing there. Those smell but don't see calls, right? And sometimes it's just low levels, right? And it may not be a life safety threat, but it's still a nuisance, right? That you have a crew tied up trying to find a problem that they're not equipped to find, right?
Mm-hmm.
And fast forward to maybe the middle of winter, where you don't really want to just shut off services on a homeowner to say, well, we don't know what it is, or wait an hour and a half for the gas utility. So to be able to equip some crews, we have had a lot of success with it in our city, finding a lot of these low level leaks and freeing up resources quicker.
Yep, key point.
We actually also had it, just quickly on a side note, we've had it, and I don't think you really touched on it in this presentation, and it might be for another presentation, but we've had it where we've had degraded LEL sensors that just didn't have the capacity to see methane. They were just so faded out, and our metal oxide sensor, reacted immediately. So just having that secondary technology has been useful for us, because that can be something that happens, right? The degrading of the cat bead.
Exactly. Do you have a question, Rick?
Yeah, Jerry, I was just going to actually take you back to your event. 4 questions, I guess, kind of in the sense. I think you made mention that your gas company city had high readings at the door. Is that correct?
Correct. His exact words were, Actually, he got his readings from the electric meter pan on the side. And he said, I have high readings of gas coming from the inside out. I have to get in this building.
Okay. Did he say what high was? Because to me, high and low is always a kind of
Yeah.
a mystery. But
Yeah,
do you know what sort of meter he had?
I don't, and I should know that, and I apologize.
Oh, not a problem. How about your meter? You said you tested with your meter. Could I ask what meter you had and what you calibrate to?
We had a 4-gas multi-ray plus. It's calibrated to methane. In fact, I'm the guy that takes care of it. So again, I thought I was the safest guy there. Didn't get a reading. We were outside, and at that point, I really was. I wasn't really looking for gas. I mean, the guy said, and again, at this point, I trusted that guy. There was actually 2 gas technicians there. So, my sense was that if he says there's gas there, he's the gas guy. I believe him. Again, Rick, I'd have forced the door if I had the right tools, and I'd probably be dead today.
Yeah, and I think, I know, as kind of Stevie was saying, I think certainly we're trying to get more and more departments to understand that limitation of a Cat B at the low end and the need for an MOS or some sort of leak detector. So, but again, it's like, well, no, I've got some manufacturers are saying, well, my meter will see it at very low levels, not recognizing the deadband. So, I mean, it's a continued battle of us against, let's say, some manufacturers, and then trying to get people to spend another dime or two on something that will protect them at the bottom end.
Mm-hmm.
I had an argument come back from one of my divisional commanders who said, we're in the business of big bang, so all I worry about is percent LEL. And as much as I tried to give him information about the injury to seniors with low-level leaks, et cetera, he wouldn't drop $300 for a simple, low-end leak detector. So we know the battle well up here, that's for sure.
Good for you. It sounds like you guys are ahead of us.
This might be a question more for you, Tom, but Jared, I appreciate your opinion as well. The metal oxide sensor nearly went the way of the dodo, years ago because of its inaccuracy, its tendency to have a lot of cross sensitivities, and all those things, are true, but that's what makes it such a great, poor man's PID, as you said, Jerry. But the question I guess I had for you, Tom, is what we've preached to our crews, especially with the Sensit, is to not really get lost in the minutia with the readings. I mean, personally, I would love to just tape over the display. I love the dots, the green, yellow, red, and that's kind of what I wish they would kind of stick to, because as we know, the metal oxide sensor is not the most accurate sensor at all times, and doesn't really have like a super strict maintenance schedule to keep it very accurate. It's pretty good for methane, but not so great for everything else. So I don't know what you think of that, Tom or Jerry, about the accuracy and maybe how important or not important the actual readings are on the detector.
When I am asked that, and I'll go around Columbus and work with some of the departments, I completely agree that I tell them, look, here, use your detector, do your job, and when it alarms, and in fact, the city of Columbus guy said the same thing. I'm in Columbus, Ohio, and they have both a catalytic beads 4-gas meter and an explosive gas meter. And so basically he says, do your job until you hear that alarm, that OSHA alarm, 10% LEL. It's not a huge thing, as we know, because that means there's still 90% before you get to the explosive level. But why look at 10, 20 parts per million, 30 parts per million? That doesn't do you any good. And it just kind of clutters your mind, unless you are on a call. And Jerry and I learned this following a couple places in New York where the gas company was training us on their SOPs. And one of the things that I had no clue, and I think Jerry was in the same boat, is they said when they go on a gas call, homeowner says, I smell gas, I'm getting out of the house, fire department shows up, or let's say the gas company shows up. They talk to the homeowner, yeah, nobody's in the house, blah, blah, blah. So they use the meter, get to the doorway, and then they run it on the outside frame of the door. If they get a reading, they don't go in. Their mission is the same as yours, life safety. Well, the only life safety is going to be the person that opens that door. So they turn the meter off at the outside. Fire department evacuates the kill box. Everybody goes home safe and sound. So you may not get a reading. You may only get the tick, the parts per million, but that means there's enough gas that's flowing from inside out that somewhere in that structure, it very well could be at the explosive level, and obviously has been, as we've seen numerous times. So in that case, yeah, you want the smallest, you just want a reading. If you get a reading from that front door and the homeowner's in the street, I say you don't go in. Jerry, what is your thought on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think Rick's comment about a high reading, I hear that all the time. I got a high reading. Well, what does that mean? If a high reading to a fireman could be 10%, I'm not too concerned. If it's 90%, I'm really concerned, percent LEL. So I think that I don't think there's an easy answer to that question. I think the answer is we need to train our guys with these instruments in that tabletop explosion chamber so we can have these discussions with them. We don't train our guys to interpret the data, which you guys know as hazmat guys, that's, half, 3/4, whatever you want to say, to battle. So I think it's all of that,
Yeah, and I should probably mention as well that, like, at least, in my service, like, it's not an either or thing for us. The metal oxide sensor doesn't take the place of a 4-gas. We still use our 4-gas and our cat bead for life safety, but for, to answer the two questions of, do I have a low level leak, and B, where is the leak? That's where the metal oxide really comes into play. Like, we use ours almost like a Geiger counter, right? As you know, it has that ticking feature, and it's very what I call firefighter resistant, right? It's point and shoot. They just kind of walk around, and as the ticking gets quicker, you're getting closer, and it has a near, not quite immediate, but I would say, I don't know what it actually is, Tom, maybe 1 second to 2 second reaction time. Like, it's pretty close to real time, where you can actively trace the source of the leak, and it's been super helpful for us, at least, to find those low level leaks.
In Canada, in the States, OSHA is kind of the governing on this, and OSHA says that the alarms are set at 10% LEL. When we, as the master dealer, do an order, and since it knows it's a fire department, they set the alarm at 10% LEL because for LEL gas, anyways. And they are told if it alarms and there's no life in the building, they get out. Is that not true, Jerry?
True.
That is, I mean, what is it for you guys?
I'll jump in. I'm going to say I have not seen anything standardized across Canada. I know some of my stuff I can extrapolate from confined space, and depending.
That's what everybody references confined space, right? And there is no real open air legislation, right? It all comes from confined space, including the detectors. They come right from the manufacturer, pre-programmed at 10%, and nobody knows why. It just all goes back to confined space, right?
Our problem is in some of these restrictions or some of the standards, we can go into spaces at 50% LEL, we can go into spaces at 25% LEL. So again, nothing's sitting for us in the fireground front, but certainly you start to look at other standards put out by our labor departments. and basically they allow you to walk into some big bad problems. So that's where we have to kind of get fire departments to understand, because typically it's us with the meter, fire departments to understand a lot of different issues.
Agreed.
Quick question, Tom, if I could, just on that, on the MOS, on the Sensit. Is there a recommendation from Sensit as far as replacement of the MOS on any frequency, or?
I've been doing this 15 years, and they warrant the unit for 3 years, and they're the only ones that can. Everybody buys from the same Japanese company. Sensit was smart enough many years ago to say, look, we warrant our products for 3 years. Your sensors only last about a year. We need you to build us a proprietary. And so they did. So everybody else works off this, this metal oxide sensor that typically lasts a year, maybe a year and a half. And that's it. And if you have one of those, you need to, every year and a half, if you're lucky, get rid of it and get a new one. Since it's, what I'm seeing is 3.5 to 4 years. I tell any department after 4 years, just get a new one. It's $50 and start from there. So it all depends on what instrument they have.
Yeah.
What's the maintenance, Tom? Is it still basically zero, like no bumping, no calibrating, like very, very little, or very infrequent, I should say?
Well, here's, I mean, Sensit says, and obviously the manufacturer says you should, for something that measures gas, that's something that you can get a reading on, not something, see, here's the difference between the two instruments. Here's one that basically has the same sensor in it, will measure gas, but because you can't calibrate this, it can't be set to the OSHA standard. So this is a true leak finder. That's all it's good for. Now it can still do the same job I talked to you about at the door frame. You're not going to get a reading, but you're going to get the tick to tell you there's gas coming from inside out. Now, if you have an instrument that measures gas, this is calibratable. Now, they say, you know, a paid department should have a calibration kit and do it every 30 to 60 days. I have seen this metal oxide sensor is so good, we send it out to demo, like the one you've got there. It hadn't been calibrated in over a year, but I guarantee you, if you put a Bic lighter to it, it would react instantly. So is it better to calibrate it on a regular basis? Absolutely. Can you get away with it? You can get away with it. So it's, you know, we know volunteers typically aren't going to. You guys certainly would have a much greater frequency for it, but yeah, that's.
I'm going to make a statement that we're trying to get everyone to understand, and certainly for our audience today, is I only trust the meter when I challenge it before I use it. So regardless of what technology, whether it's Cat B, a wet cell, or an MOS, I got to know minutes before I start making life-saving decisions whether or not it's working. And then if it's something that could be calibrated, is it accurate? And so I would encourage everybody that sits with a once a week or docking station, all that stuff. I'm telling you what, I got CalGas on the rig, and basically I'm checking it before I make the decisions, because it's just too much hanging out there to make a decision on something that may or may not work.
Rick, you're exactly right. And I think the problem is, especially here in the States, is that we haven't trained our guys to understand how important that instrument is. They think it's like a watch or a clock, you know, you set it once a year and it's all right, you know. And I just think we failed our guys to, you know, and I'm a trainer. But again, it kind of comes back to they don't know what they don't know. And one of the things, Rick, we've learned is that here in the States, it's not in any of our training. It's not in our firefighter one. It's not in our officer one. It's like, you know, God thinks you know this, you know, well, well, if you haven't been trained, how, you know, So again, it comes back to, and I was the poster boy. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I thought I knew, you know? So
Yeah.
Good points, Rick.
That's why I think forums like this, where we get a chance to share, and I'll tell you the thing that got me started 10, 15 years ago now, I guess, was we respond to a natural gas call with a meter that had a little check mark says it passed calibration or passed bump test. It showed 0% LEL on methane. I said, no problem. Got back to the hall. I showed it 50% LEL methane. It read 6.
Yeah.
If that didn't cause a pucker. So I started checking all the meters in the city. And when I sent off an email to the divisional commander, when I came back on Tuesday, turns out Monday they pulled every meter off every truck in the city. You know, I said, didn't need to pull them, but you should have checked them. And it just becomes that whole issue where, especially for a lot of our meters, or some of our meters, I should say, they're calibrated to pentane or, you know, other gases to minimize the correction factor and I remember reading it 30 years ago. A lot of the cat beads go blind to methane first. So while we ensure some level of safety on a cat bead by maybe minimizing the correction factors, and we use pentane, I've actually had a number of meters now go very much blind to methane, which then speaks to, you know, like your multi-ray being called to methane, bang on. You know, concerns are, yeah, there's bigger correction factors, but nonetheless, the bread and butter of our calls for natural gas, at least we're accurate in making decisions.
So Rick, you cal to pentane so you don't wear out the sensor. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Manufacturers in particular seem to suggest calibrating to pentane to minimize the correction factor, because pentane will burn a little bit differently. My maximum correction factor is maybe a 1.6. If I calibrate to methane, correction factors run up to 3.3, 3.6. So what they're saying is
for different flammables, you're saying, right?
Yeah, you get into the styrenes and stuff like that, you have this maximum. So by default, they say, well, to make it safer for a flammable liquid or flammable gas, let's calibrate to pentane. And basically I went after the manufacturer and pushed on them really hard. Now I finally got a letter that says, well, if that's what you feel, then calibrate to methane. So we switched our whole department over to methane calibration at that point.
We've also switched to methane after having a couple cat bead sensors not respond the way they should. It's a well documented phenomenon with pretty much every manufacturer. It's just usually buried in the back of the 100-page manual that, oh yeah, by the way, when the sensor gets tired, it might still pass a pentane cal but not see methane, and that's simply because pentane burns at half the temperature of methane. It's about 500 degrees versus 1,000 degrees. So if you have a really old tired sensor, it will still be able to get up to temp to see pentane, but not methane. Then you just get that 0 reading, right? So, yeah.
Interesting.
I talked to a top at the last hazmat show that we could actually go to. One of the top dealers for a top manufacturer, who's an ex firefighter who then went to work for a dealer, and said point blank to me, Tom, the dirty little secret is the cat bead standard 4-gas meter is every day, either from cleaning, especially now the COVID with all the cleaning, that cat bead sensor degrades on a daily basis. And you could in 2 years virtually have not much of a reading in the thing. And it's just been, the manufacturers have just clammed up over it, and which is part of the reason I think metal oxide has, been ignored by everybody until Jerry and the articles and Sense It and all of that has been out there. I mean, literally, is there, I've been doing this 15 years, and I'm not a firefighter. I'm afraid of heights, and I would run in the other direction, but which is why I'm the perfect guy to find. And I've been looking for a Jerry for that long. And he showed up at the International Hazmat. I showed him with a Bic lighter, the unit.
I'll get you for that, Tom.
Oh my God. Yeah. I said, what the hell is this thing? How could I not know about it? So virtually, I cannot find another person in the United States. Now, Steve, you're you're kind of a Jerry Knapp in Canada, but I think the two of you are the only two that I can find personally that train and educate folks on on explosive gases. One day I got my thick Knapp NFPA catalog, so I started looking through, and it was after hours and nothing on gas. So I called him up, and I happened to get the lady that was in charge of that. No, we don't really want to get into training of gas detect. I said, you do everything else. Look at your book. Sorry,
Yeah,
we
and
don't want to get into that. And that's basically been it.
And that's the thing up here, at least in Canada, and I'm not sure, it might vary state to state, but here in Canada and definitely Ontario, what happens is when you buy safety equipment, you're often buying it from a third-party vendor, and that vendor sells harnesses and pylons and safety vests. And, you know, when you walk in and say, hi, I'd like a gas detector, they go, because like MSA or whoever, they don't really sell gas detectors direct, right? Or Industrial Scientific,
no.
party vendor, and they don't have that expertise. They just say, okay, who are you? What do you work for? Oh, fire department. Yep, take this. Here's your Cal Gas, and go, right? Like they just kind of sell the fire department package, right? So there's not a lot of end user education there. Quickly though, Tom, I would like to ask you about that laser gas detector. When I first saw them, they were about $100,000, not necessarily through Sensit, but a different manufacturer. What's the rate on those now?
They're Mississauga just purchased one for 12 grand.
So can we borrow theirs? I'm just down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get him to run in
I'm
your
sure
first. Get him to run in your first alarm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't make money selling those things. I mean, I wish I did. Like I said, I've managed to get them here into my county. They are a shit hot instrument for size up. It is just, we found a gas leak the other day that the utility could not find. A local department just told me they were a warehouse, and it was interesting. It was a high ceiling warehouse. So they used a laser and pointed up and got, significant readings of gas up near the ceiling. The utility guy comes in, he goes, no, your instrument's all screwed up. He goes, I got nothing. And the captain goes, no, the gas is up there. So I think in terms of firefighter safety, that instrument is really close to my heart. And I tell our guys, they all go, oh, $12,000. I go, yeah, you know what? My first day in the burn trauma center was $59,000, and I signed myself out before the day was done. So, you got chrome wheels on your rig, buy a laser. It's just for size up, it's just a tremendous instrument.
Yeah, it seems like it would be
it's
useful.
Yeah, it's cool.
Before I forget, if anyone is interested in taking a Sensit for a spin, maybe not necessarily in operations, but to get your hand on it and train with it and see what it can do, Firecraft has donated one to, oh wow, it doesn't work with my background here, but there we go. They've donated one to us, Omra. So if you want one, Tom will pay the shipping anywhere in Canada to send it to you to get it in your training division. At least I wouldn't throw it on a fire truck necessarily right off the gate, but you can definitely get your hands on it and try it out.
They make an instrument called I don't know what you have there. Do you have a metal oxide? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
2D. It's the 2D.
They make a gold
Here you
G2 that has a 4-gas built into it, which is, I think, a really good instrument as well. It does everything,
Here's how strong CSA is in Canada. The gas utilities who Sensit sells these G2 meters to into Canada, but CSA says, and here's a metal oxide sensor. CSA says, we don't want that. If you're going to sell meters up here, you're going to, and this is a catalytic sensor bastardized onto a G2, and that's what they sell up there. So it's it's amazing, absolutely amazing that CSA is so strong. You know, you had mentioned, you know, they're not unreliable, but they have, you know, they have plus or minus 10%, where a cat has plus or minus 1%. Well, to me, chicken, all that means is if I'm looking for gas, and let's say it's propane, it's heavier than methane, my instrument is going to alarm earlier because it doesn't need as much. And if it's pentane, it's going to alarm a little later. By the way, the pentane, but it's only going to be like 9% versus 11 instead of the 10%. I asked Sensit about pentane. They said that they would not calibrate to pentane. They told me the exact same thing, that it does.
Well, the theme that every manufacturer will tell you, no matter what detector you're buying, is you're supposed to be calibrating to your target gas. And I would argue that every fire service in North America, or nearly every fire service, target gas is methane or natural gas, unless you're in like a rural motorhome type area, propane type fuel.
True. I agree, Steve. Yeah.
Not really seeing any. I think you covered it all, Jerry. Like no room for questions. There will be part 2 next Friday. Jerry, I don't know if you want to speak to maybe what that will entail.
Sure. We'll just go a little more into some of the details we talked about today. I just wanted to kind of give the guys an introduction, gals an introduction to what we may or may not know, kind of why we don't know this stuff. Again, not our fault, not in any of our training. Maybe there's some areas for improvement, but we'll go over some more details, similar format next week.
Well, and as you said, right, it's maybe not as much of a hazmat team problem, but it might be, but it's definitely a firefighter problem where, you know, what's the training with your 4-gas detector? It's not much. You're just a new person on the rig, and that's who tends to get it, right? They just kind of hand it to you and it's point and shoot, wait for it to beep.
That's right. That's right.
Do a little better.
So exactly. So I think the hazmat guys have a role. I think we understand this a little bit better than Joe Fireman does. So I think we can help those guys out, and we should, and maybe it's on us to do that, you know.
100%. Well, thank you both for your time. I don't know if there's any other questions, but I really do appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next Friday. Thanks so much for doing that.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Tom.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good seeing you.
Yep. Talk some more soon.